So today, a bit of family stories. In the majority, I was raised by my grandfather, silent generation. He was born pre-World War II. Since I come from a broken family, I was a mother and a father to myself primarily, then raised in the streets, streetwise. But that's not about this. It's about the stories that I harnessed from parts of my family that I would like to convey further as a form of a commemoration. So through my mother, I may be related to many dynastic families from between the 8th and 10th centuries, whether the Inglings, whether the French royalty, doesn't matter, 8th to 10th century. However, it is the closest that concern me right now. So, as I was standing and smoking my cigarette outside the building, I've witnessed a beautiful soul incarnating into me and recognized it once again as my great-grandfather, Ferdinand, who was from Vienna. He passed away when I was 3 years of age. He was an engineer, a meliorant, educated most likely at the Lviv Polytechnic. His father, Joseph, was a visiting Kapellmeister at Hofburg, visiting, when Franz Joseph and Sissy danced their waltzes. He was enrolled in the army during the World War I, and in as much as I'm concerned, he served under Field Marshal von Leonardi in the Commando Division 7, that was the cavalry artillery of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So his son was imprisoned, his son Ferdinand, during the World War in Konzentrationslager Auschwitz as a Pole. That was a labor camp, not the extermination camp. So he was there for 2 years and forced to labor, but he spoke fluent and perfect German. Apart from being hit with a shovel over the head by a Schutzstaffen officer, he was released early due to his German qualifications and his qualifications as an engineer when the front lines moved. So he was employed in building and blasting away bridges in order to secure the German defense. Right after the war, he ended up in an NKVD prison that was governed by fellow Poles and Jews. So he was tortured, he was beaten for 5 years as a collaborator. Notice the irony. And as he was released, my family from my grandmother's side said he was the happiest man alive, joie de vivre, and he could whistle as beautiful as the bird. So my great-grandmother from my mother's side, so his wife, was coming from a noble landed family related to the Bielsk princes, the Bielsko-Biała princes. They were owning castles, they were owning plenty of land, but that too ended in the 1949 with the nationalization of all the intelligentsia, aristocracy, of all the elites, their properties, their extermination, their destruction, and so on. So, as for my grandfather's mother's side, there was a story of a son and a father. That was the Bavarian-Swabian part of the lineage that migrated to Warsaw later. Parts of this family were owing the Kamień and Nadarzyn villages in 16th century. So my family was settled in Warsaw region since at least 16th century. And some lineages of my mother go back to Przemędowski. There's a Przemędowski Palace nearby, built by my ancestor. There was a Przemędowski Palace in Krakow. But these Bavarian Swabian part of the family was a different line. And there is a story about how the front lines moved during World War I. The father was a White Guard, so he was loyal to the Tsar. The son was a Bolshevik, and they both perished during the World War I and during the revolution in Russia, when the companies producing many war products were moved towards Odessa, and most likely they died of typhoid in Odessa. Now, one of the family members, namely one Zaleski, from my grandfather's line, was punished for participating in the January uprising. During the after the partitioning of Poland, there were two uprisings, and he was sentenced as an exile to Siberia. But another friend of his, Count Pranitsky, intervened at his behest to the Tsar, and he was granted the privilege of returning back to the territory of nowadays Poland. So his travels and adventures from Vladivostok back to Warsaw, it took him 2 years of plenty of adventures and travels to go back there, which I find resonating with my own travels through Eurasia via the Trans-Siberia to Ulaanbaatar and back. Of course, I wasn't living in times when that was very harsh. I had relative comfort in the second class of the Trans-Siberian. So a different story. What is more, on my father's side, my grandmother Modzelewska most likely stems from the Tatars, the Kazan Tatars. They were Catholicized Tatars. Another part of this family, supposedly, as my father conveys, was fighting under Grunewald on the Polish side. There was one Chorągwie, which means flag. So one of these ancestors commanded 200 to 300 light cavalry under this particular battle in the 15th century. As for his father, he was a military man, a major. His father was Józef Krzelak, and he was the steerman of the Gift of Pomerania, the first frigate ship, 3-mast, which is now defunct and is turned into a museum. However, that was one of the first ships that the Polish Navy acquired during regaining of independence after 1980. So, quite a story. His wife is of unknown origins. My father posits that she was a cabaret dancer and singer in Danzig, in the free city of Danzig, but that is unverified. As for Józef Krzelak, he's buried in the Haga Norra Cemetery in Stockholm, Sweden. So, this much. One more thing. My great-grandfather, was an elder Ulan in the 27th Regiment by the name of Stefan Batory, under Rotmeister Wisłocki, and we carry on the cavalry traditions in our family. Perhaps not my grandfather, but my mother is an excellent rider, and that was conveyed also to me. So I rode in European saddles, Mongolian saddles, American saddles. The greatest feature that I achieved is jumping through fences in full gallop, which is quite a stupid thing to do because usually you slow down to gallop and then jump. And I had an accident during this run of events. I like to ride through terrain, through forests, I still remember as a kid when I was riding through a forest and I had to loosen the saddle to avoid a branch and then tie it back together. All this. My grandmother was a witch, a psionic, so crystals exploded. The electricity and electric devices went insane. They say that the line ends with a male. So here I am, ending the lineage and conveying stories for you to memorize perhaps, or to listen to. Thank you.